Hi everyone. Welcome to this Reuters webinar titled Win with Generative AI, Transform SME and in-market underwriting for speed, accuracy, and scale. We hear a lot about AI transformation. I would call it more business and behavioral transformation, actually, but we hear this from everywhere. And we also know, based on statistics, that 70% to some say 95% of pilots never scale. So let's start with the real question. Are you building frontier capability or frontier optics? What does success look like beyond the slide deck? So welcome to everybody to this discussion. We are not going just to talk about AI theory, right? We are here to talk about practical AI enterprise performance and delivery. So how we start building those performance engines. Too many organizations out there still ask, what is our AI strategy? And I'm sure we are going to hear that a lot from Nicole, but the boards right here want to hear what are the outcomes we are going to achieve. So today we are cutting through the noise. We are not going to talk about experimentation. We are going to focus on what a frontier firm, what is this type of organization which are becoming intelligence on tap, using human and technology to collaborate with one another and actually starting managing technology in a very structured manner, right? Human-led, agent-operated business models that transform underwriting with speed, accuracy, and scale. So we'll explore how data governance become the strategic for the strategic differentiator, the moat, not the checkbox. We are going to look at human agent teaming, and we are going to look at how we start building those ecosystem and drive the right leadership within the organization. So let's begin by some introduction. I'm really thrilled to have Caroline Thompson with us, Chief Underwriting Officer at AdPay. We have Alec Bibic, who is Head of Product at CFC. And we have Nicole Ritchie, Head of Commercial Generative AI Underwriting Assistant at Verisk. So welcome to you all. Thank you very much for being here. So let's dive into our first act, I call first act, Act 1, which is really about looking at the foundation. And for everybody on the call, remember, this is your session. You have the chat function, and so please ask us questions. We will look at those questions and answer them as we actually progress through this webinar. So Nicole, I'm going to start with you, right? From your vantage point at Verisk, data integrity is the foundation of everything. And we know that governance, ethics, integrity, trustworthy AI is critical for success today. But most insurance companies are struggling with fragmented legacy system, therefore legacy data as well. So from your work and from what you've seen, Nicole, what governance guardrails does Verisk, put in place when you are working with clients, when you look at generative AI underwriting, and how do you change the visibility of risk?
Yeah, thank you, Sabine. So first and foremost, data integrity is just the foundation of trustworthy AI. And in insurance, fragmented legacy data is exactly where GenAI can either create leverage or create risk. So before we scaled GenAI and underwriting, we put governance guardrails in place kind of in 3 layers. First were data guardrails. So we standardize key underwriting concepts into a data model that's aligned to industry structures that you would imagine, like Accord and others. And we enforce data quality gates or completeness checks, schema validation, anomaly detection, and confidence thresholds that are on all of those extracted fields. And just as important, we built provenance and lineage. So every critical risk attribute can be traced back to its source document or system. That gives us a timestamp and a confidence score. So it was really about data guardrails. And then, second, Gen AI guardrails. So we didn't allow any free form miscellaneous like underwriting facts. So we used grounded generation retrieval from curated sources with citations, which is key. And we restricted models by the task and an improved an approved model garden, as we call it. So we put in place evaluation harnesses to really test for hallucination risk, safety issues, and regression before anything went live. So with our solution, and I would say for all high impact decisions in underwriting, Gen AI is proposing and the underwriter is ultimately decisioning. It is always human in the loop.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Partly in our industry, right? Regulated industry, human in the loop is key. And so right now, when we think about AI in general, right, and the current technological advancement, and I think also agentic, we need to make sure it's about augmentation rather than replacement. Alex, coming to you. That takes us to culture, right? Underwriting culture, I guess leadership as well, and how we actually deliver, an environment where people can trust what is going on. So how do you balance ethics and speed in AI outputs, when you look at your product development cycles while protecting risk selection integrity, especially with external data source, which I guess are mixed with your internal data?
Exactly, yeah. And thank you for the introduction, Sabine. Just to quickly build on that, I lead product at CFC. We're a multi-line technology-enabled MGA, perhaps best known for our focus in the cyber market. Me and the team sit at the intersection between our customers, so underwriters, brokers, and claims, and our technology function. And we're really looking at driving value creation through technology. So how do we support GWP growth, operational efficiency, and the above? You're right. I mean, broadly across the market, underwriting culture is cautious, and for very good reasons. At CFC, we've deployed and we are deploying Gen AI across the underwriting value chain, which I can talk a little bit more about as we step through the conversation. We are very fortunate. We have a fantastic culture. We have a really innovative and collaborative underwriting leadership. We invest in product and engineering. We have a fantastic data and AI team with huge internal expertise. So we have the right environment and the right modern and unified data foundation, the right technology to enable us to do these things properly, quickly, and at scale. But still, we are very deliberate about where AI sits in the decision chain. And we recognize the caution that you've mentioned, and we think it's rational and we design for it. You specifically mentioned around data sources. I mean, these are super important for us, and particularly in the cyberspace where, we wrote our first cyber policy over 25 years ago. So we have lots of historic internal data. We also utilize a lot of external data sources too. I'm sure my colleagues on the panel do as well. We use Gen AI for attribute extraction. So from emails and documents across both our underwriting and our broker-facing channels. Firstly, for speed, we look to try and make the journeys as frictionless as possible. So measures like driving operational efficiency and optimizing for speed to quote. But after that, we also automate data enrichment. So we look to pull in firm data, company details, incorporation date, company activity, as well as technographic attributes. So for cyber risks, things like domain, subdomain, and scanning for known vulnerabilities as well. We don't just do that to support our brokers and our partners with faster quotes. We're also automating the data enrichment for things like supporting better risk selection. So how do we support the automatic referral of risks that we need a specific underwriter to review, or more attribute-aware pricing? So how do we get more insight into the risk to inform pricing to support more granular rating? So to your point, speed is only one part, and it actually only matters there where the outcome is safe, it's explainable and commercially predictable. From a governance perspective, guardrails and operating model, we in technology, we work closely alongside our underwriting and our actuarial function. So, we ensure that data sources are approved. We believe AI should be building on existing gold standard inputs rather than altering them. Testing, so signal generation must remain clean and sound. We always ensure there's a human in the loop at various points in the journey. It's important for us for oversight. And we also ensure that there is always a clear audit trail as well. So for us, the AI and data enrichment should accelerate underwriting, but we believe it should do so by amplifying underwriter insight and supporting established heuristics. So it isn't necessarily about speed versus ethics. It's ensuring that speed comes with better insight, stronger guardrails. Again, to Nicole's point, really ensuring that underwriting judgment stays firmly in control.
Alex, there's one question that comes to mind as listening to what you just said around the leverage and the use of data, external data sources across the underwriting process. Something which probably our listener may want to ask, which come to mind is, are there areas where you see more value being created across the process? Because you mentioned, for example, fulfilling the need of your brokers or submission. Are there areas within the process where you know there will be value created from leveraging AI?
I can talk more about it as we kind of move forward, but yeah, I mean, we are pulling in external data across different parts of the journey. Again, some of it is to ensure that we can provide a view for our brokers to ensure that we can speed up their journey and make that as frictionless as possible. Some of the attributes we are looking through external data sources, we don't ask for from our brokers, but we can get a fuller risk profile, and that supports us being able to get, again, like I said, better risk selection or more granular pricing. So I guess it depends on what you're optimizing for, Sabine, right? Some of it is optimizing for speed to quote and supporting our brokers in a frictionless trading environment, but some of it is supporting underlying portfolio metrics as well.
Wonderful. Caroline.
Yes.
Yes, welcome. So from your personal underwriting seat, right? I would love to hear from you about the first moment you trusted AI insight, right, as an underwriter. How did you look at the risk and how did you look at the way you made decisions? What are the type of governance metrics you implemented within your team to feel comfortable that you could use AI?
I might jump on Alex's question you asked before I start answering that one. In terms of some of the things we've done for brokers at Appe, to help with their process is also a tool using AI for quote comparison year over year. I think that's really helped lay out the terms for brokers so that they can we're trying to do the work for them a little, get ahead of it. But I think that's an interesting one for sure. We also have built, outside of the underwriting process, we've built a fraud detection tool for our insureds. And so it's all leveraging AI. That's been really interesting. And we have a lot of customers buying into that. But to go back to when did I first trust, it goes back to some of the things Nicole mentioned in the beginning of the call. I think really when you start actually using these models and holding them against what she talked about, which was that confidence threshold, right? And making sure that it was giving transparency in what sources it was using. That's what kind of moved the needle for me. And then I feel like I could bring that back to where I've worked and with underwriting teams and really share that confidence myself amongst others. Because I think at first there is a resistance to it. And so those governance metrics really signaled the readiness for me. I think at Bay, and I'm specifically CUO for the middle market team, but I do understand the larger picture of at Bay. And so we've built AI that just innately doesn't have the bias in there, right? And we've made sure we've had the confidence around that. So I feel like underwriters do very much get the clarity to trust the decision or the information that it's giving. But we do rely heavily on an underwriter's decision at the end of the day to make that call.
Yeah, and that's very important for everybody on the call here, that at the end of the day, this are an implement tool to actually create speed time to market. And at the end of the day, you still have to look at the data and actually make the right choices as to whether you want to underwrite the risk, whether it fits into your portfolio from an exposure viewpoint and accumulation viewpoint. And actually, the underwriter is still here to make the decision. So don't forget, you can ask us questions. We have a great Q&A, and I'm not seeing any question coming through right now. So I'm going to move to my next question, and I'm going to come to Alex. So going back to culture, it's about today human and agent teaming together, what we call this human agent collaboration. And I'm sure everybody is using great technology right now in the sense that, I play with Claude, I play with ChatGPT, I've built my schedules, and now even in, Claude, you have co-work. So we actually fully human agent teaming now. So within this context, Alex, it feels like we need to build a little bit more of a workflow, right, to dance with the technology. So what concrete teaming architecture did you build so that AI agent actively support underwriters within your teams, not just summarize or inform, right? Maybe do few things which are a little bit more sophisticated.
Yeah, thanks, Sabine. I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing with agentic underwriting. So, for context, our aim is that the large majority of our SME submissions are processed with one click or less. And ultimately, we're doing that to scale and enhance judgment, but also to free up our underwriters' time so they can spend more time on more complex risks, as well as understanding and underwriting emerging risks, and importantly, to spend more time with our broking partners. Um, our automation journey began quite a few years ago. We have various types of AI and machine learning models that are deployed across the underwriting value chain. Historically, they are executing on fairly discrete use cases, but the rise of GenAI has shifted our thinking and our approach over the last few years. And you mentioned, Sabine, around actively supporting underwriters. For us, that means moving into something that is more active and autonomous, or it's semi-autonomous in the short term, operating alongside the underwriter inside the workflow, right? It's that, and that's the key point. For us at CFC, we've delivered a production grade agentic underwriter MVP late last year, so minimum viable product. It's proven it's scalable. We're now kind of taking it through stage production deployment. So today, the agent or the agentic underwriter has access to the submission where we've utilized LLMs to extract relevant risk attributes from the email or the documents. It then orchestrates further firm and technographic enrichment, as I spoke about earlier, to create that fuller risk profile. It runs pre-eligibility checks, such as sanctions, and importantly, it applies the right rules and guidance. So it has access to the underwriting guides, it has access to our product configuration, and it has access to our pricing engines through internal API calls. So the first time the underwriter sees the inquiry, the agent has already prepared a quote recommendation that's modeled on best-in-class referral. So the heavy lifting's done, the underwriter can focus on judgment. Now, just to be clear, like the aim for us isn't capability, right? We're only leaning in where there's genuine benefit for the underwriter or our broking partners and ultimately our customers in improving the trading experience. But right now for us, like the building confidence is key. So we're using this phase to identify edge cases and refine behavior and strengthen trust. We're being deliberate and fairly cautious in how we scale this. So we are limiting the number and the types of inquiries that the agent sees, and it always operates within underwriting guides and appetite, but isn't a POC. It's a scalable, repeatable capability. What we're seeing today is about half of the inquiries that go through that channel can be processed with one click. So we're seeing real efficiency gains, and we have a clear runway to get the remainder. So to your point around the human agent teams, we're focused on that and the future of that. I think our agent underwriter is really there to augment judgment, is to remove the heavy lift on ingestion, on triage, and to create that best-in-class referral so that we can allocate the human judgment to where it's most impactful. I think once that's established, a future state could be multi-agent systems, specialized agents managing things like chasing missing information, supporting renewals, and handling other, let's say, laborious workflow tasks, all orchestrated by the underwriter. So I think the evolution is from recommendation to orchestration. But again, the key point being the human stays firmly in control.
Yeah, and it's critical that human, partly in regulated industries like ours, remain in control. One question that comes again to mind, Alex, is you upskilling. You mentioned upskilling and reskilling. So can I ask you how that works? And I would like to ask this question to everybody, actually, because we talk a lot about, we need to train, upskill, and reskill our underwriter, our team. what type of programs have you been able to implement to keep that trust, right, from your team as well?
Just to be super clear on upskilling, reskilling, I guess you're talking about what is the future and how does the role evolve over time? Is that right?
So I'm just probably talking about the current state, to actually make sure the underwriters are comfortable using the technology that you're implementing. It's new for all of us using those agents. It's new. What are the type of program you implemented to enable the underwriter to feel comfortable and trust the new product, the technology you're implementing?
I guess there's two. Sorry,
Go ahead.
go on, Nicole. Do you want to go?
Sure. It's kind of similar to Caroline's comment earlier, just about trust. So, kind of at the top of the call, I talked on like data guardrails, right? But there's also operational guardrails. And we exposed our underwriters to all of this framework from the get, like so that they could see what was under the hood,
Okay.
and understood what was behind the AI. So, the framework is clear accountability. You've got model owners, you've got product owners, you've got risk and compliance. And then there's more of the technical capabilities too. So they can see the logging, they can see audit trails, monitoring, like exposing them to incident management and how it is actually enabled. So I think, in other words, like governance isn't a committee. We have a lot of governance committees, don't get me wrong. But I think that for us, it's a true release gate with accountability owners and sharing with our underwriters what that process was for those protections was incredibly important. And then one other point, like the impact on risk visibility was really huge. So Alex alluded to some of these metrics, and we have the same thing with Underwriting Assistant. So our underwriters can instantly see confidence and completeness metrics on the file at all times. What is missing? What is source backed? So what is Verisk verified? What's inferred, right? So there's a lot of data in legacy systems. And so bringing that in and talking about data cleanliness, right? I talked on it on really the data governance earlier. But what I mean is, at the portfolio level, leadership could gain visibility into like, where are there systemic data gaps? Like, where do we have like bigger problems to address? And I think because that data was really normalized and traceable. So we didn't just unleash GenAI into like legacy fragmentation or into our existing flow. We just really heavily use the governance to turn that fragmented data into what I would say like a very observable risk picture. And that helps everybody to understand the process and how it was different.
Yeah, and that is critical. I can see we are getting some questions. So I was going to start with Caroline, but this question is for you all. Caroline, you spoke about fraud detection. So what type of fraud you are screening for?
We have developed a tool that if one of our customers feels that an email is unsafe or is asking them, to wire transfer money to someone that they have not verified, or socially engineered to asking a question to reveal some sort of data source or something, they can forward that into our AI tool, and we can assess if it is fraud or not. So it's been great. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other techniques, maybe Nicole or Alex, around fraud detection, how we embed fraud within the underwriting process? Any experience from any of you? That was the first question. It was targeted to Caroline, but checking whether there are other best practices we can share. The next question that comes through is, as the industry continues investment in generative AI to shift from mere document extraction to complex decision trees, how scalable are these decision tree models? How could we make this more predictive or prescriptive versus suggestive, and therefore more widely used? Is this a question for Nicole?
Sorry, Sabine, I was struggling to make sure I wasn't still on mute. So I apologize for the delay there. I did want to just mention to the earlier question, We do also have some, fraud detection at Verisk, certainly. And we are in our exact analysis platform, we do have AI capabilities that are really helping to reduce property claims research time and information review, and decision support. And then, we also do have on the fraud detection side, specifically Verisk's digital media forensics, which is leveraging our advanced AI and ML algorithms to automate the detection of potential fraud. So we're using some image detection, manipulations, and looking for tampered PDFs before payout, which is just a huge issue that the industry is seeing. So I apologize for being slow to come off the mute.
No problem, no problem. And then the next question we have for you, and I think it's just because of the technicality, it's why I just went to you, Nicole, is when you start looking at some of the transformation and investment being made in the industry, one of the questions here being asking, when you start looking at those complex decision trees, how do you actually make sure those tree models are really well aligned? How could we make sure that, we make the difference between prescriptive, suggestive models and how we make them use them more widely within the enterprise?
Yeah, sure. So for us, it is very much about documenting the actual workflow that exists today for our underwriters, right? And so anything that you are doing with automation and decision trees, I mean, you can get really good out of the box with LLMs on what should happen, generally speaking. But your individual underwriting guidelines and how your most senior person would handle looking at a risk and where you go from here is often in the senior underwriter's mind. I call him Frank all the time when we're talking with clients. Like, he's just Frank in my mind. And I'm like, well, what would Frank do? And you've got all your techs and all of your more junior underwriters kind of going to him for that recommendation. So what we do is we actually expose a framework, and this is what we're working on in our agentic offering of Underwriting Assistant, is exposing that framework to the underwriter that says, okay, what is the business logic that I would do next? And so how would I think about this? And so we're training the models on that outcome and that workflow and just allowing them to give feedback every time. And really, we think there's so much automation in insurance, but commercial lines is so complex. And every line of business is being handled differently. And so you've got a lot of times with a lot of large carriers, many different teams that would handle a workflow differently. So it really is about exposing that layer so they can customize their workflow, they can approve a decision, they can tell us how it might deviate from a standard path when those exceptions occur, and then using AI to look at those patterns over time and say, did this have a good outcome, right? So now let's look at what the underwriting decision was. Did it have a good claims outcome? And what has the renewal been on? What has the experience been? So then we can tie back to real profitability for a firm. So just really exposing that automation layer for engagement has been really important to us.
Caroline, anything else you want to add? Yeah.
Yeah, I have an example. So cyber is our biggest line at Epay. We have other specialty lines, but I would say an example of where this is coming into practice is there's obviously privacy concerns that we have to think about when we're underwriting our customers and how they handle their customers' data. There's lots of different types of exposures there. And so there is a very prescriptive way we can check on these items, right? Like a perfect example would be going onto a customer's website and seeing if they have opt-out provisions, right? And so we have instructed underwriters on how to get to that data, and so to make then a conclusion and a decision on if we want to offer that coverage within our portfolio, or on that particular customer. So there's definitely AI being built to take away that first just step-by-step process from an underwriter's desk. But then how do we get to that next step where it's actually suggesting a decision there. I think we're not there yet, right? We want to get comfortable enough over and over again. It's coming up with results. So it is very much like a testing ground for our underwriters right now. And we're sharing and collaborating, and we're working in an environment where we can share feedback. It does go back to that question you asked, like, how is the training going, right? The training happens, but I think it's that collaborative environment and feedback pool that you have to continue to check in with your teams to make sure that they're providing the feedback needed to get the AI to the place where it's fully functioning.
Yeah, yeah. Alex, anything else you want to add around the scalability of those models within your environment?
I'll keep it really short. Yeah, to the question asked, decision trees can scale well. I think they have to follow clear underwriting rules and good data. So to make it more prescriptive, you need those strong guardrails so the system knows what it can do, what it can't do, and the consistent data so those decisions are reliable.
Yeah, perfect. So Caroline, coming back to you, right? When you start looking at underwriting at the end of the day, we are moving now to outcome. It's not about input, right? And output, it's all about outcomes. How did you recalibrate your workflow so that the agent you know, took the mundane, repetitive task, right? And enable the underwriters to stay focused on value creation?
Mhm. It all ties to what we're discussing, and I've worked at a number of different places that were fundamentally built around AI and with AI incorporated within the organization. And so, we've gone from that time where AI, it goes back to kind of the decision tree where AI in the beginning was just allowing us to put risk on different tracks. And as I said before, I would see some distrust from underwriters, but really at the core was just either an error or a rule that was not fully clarified in the right way. And so there was easy edits to make there. But I think in this next phase of development where these underwriting tools have started to review contracts, policy forms, answer actual questions, I think there is that hesitancy and people and underwriters being skeptical of what the feedback is initially. But I think it is the users that have thrown themselves into it. It really does allow them to get the work that they don't need to spend a lot of time off of their desk, where they can focus on, for example, out marketing and talking to brokers and creating those relationships more. I even saw, we've done a lot of work around, we have one incredible underwriter that's worked closely with the product team to develop an excess tool that evaluates like the current policies that we write excess of in across the industry, as well as a tool that can assess a new carrier that we want to sit excess of and immediately come up with a result where our comfortability is, and create a summary for an underwriter. Those are the key things that really will boost an underwriter's efficiency in day to day. And so we're always looking for pockets like that can help the team.
Yeah. Any resistance you had to overcome?
Yes, definitely. I think definitely. I think it goes back to the distrust and then I think it's underwriters that just don't are not using AI in their daily lives, right? And maybe they're using it in a limited capacity as a replacement for Google, and not as like fully embedding themselves in generating good prompts that will generate good results. And so yes, there is that like lack of wanting to learn. Then there's resistance to tools that actually could help create it. Yeah. So yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Nicole, Alex, I mean, I'm curious about the resistance to change. What has been, Nicole, your experience around resistance to change?
Oh yeah. I mean, there's a ton, right? So I think for us, what made underwriters champions and not resistant or like skeptics was really treating enablement as a change program and not just like a specific training event. A lot of the best thinking out there really reinforces this. McKinsey talks about moving people from experimenters to accelerators. How do you make them active participants? Gartner has research that's clear that says really trust is the prerequisite to adoption. And we assumed that skepticism was rational. Like, we're talking about underwriters, you guys. So we are trained to distrust anything that is not provable. And I think so for us, the goal of the change management program wasn't like generate AI excitement and buzz. It was, how do we earn trust and convert that into, daily usefulness and user control. I'll share a little secret at the Verisk team. One of the things we do is like, what is the task that you hate most in your day? If there's anything that just gives you that moment of, oh gosh, like it's going to take so long and I don't want to do this. How can our AI teams come together and ideate about how you could do it with AI? And it's not just in the professional life, it's in your personal life too. And so we spend a lot of time talking about those concepts and how you could use those throughout your day. And I think, like Caroline, to your point, where you're like someone who's just like going out to Google and getting a Gemini experience, it's like, hey, here's some AI about this, but they're not working in, the Gemini app and they're not doing research. The quickest way to turn them on is to give them something they hate and show them how AI can help them. And that's a moment where you're like, oh, okay, I can love this and I can get behind this. And then you build that trust. But yeah.
Alex, any little stories from you as well?
just to build on Nicole's point, I think the biggest way to deal with resistance is as Nicole said, start where the underwriters feel the pain. Not necessarily where the technology is kind of the most exciting. We looked at it and we looked at where is the low judgment, high friction tasks, and let's work at those first. So we spoke a little bit about enrichment, ingestion, that kind of triage part. So underwriters immediately felt having time back and without losing control of that. Once the trust is built and we're working through that, introducing quote recommendation, positioning it as a support. So I guess building on that, and the adoption comes from looking at the removal of friction, improving quality, and not trying to replace judgment or kind of the expertise, which is critical.
Yeah. So Nicole, we already touched on upskilling, reskilling all of it, training, enablement. I would love for you to dive a little bit more around, how do we measure things? We are all working for corporations. We're involved with Fortune 500, big organization, enterprise, that was the terms I was looking for. How do we start measuring the shift so that we know we are moving forward and delivering value to the business?
Sure. So I think the way that we're thinking about that is, I guess, three things. First, we co-designed with our underwriters. So this is an underwriting assistant platform that is built by underwriters for underwriters. And we started with, I always say we've been in stealth mode for a long time. We started with a small group of power users and we built around their workflows. So Alex talked on it earlier, like, what are those tasks? So triage, appetite fit, submission completeness, missing information outreach is huge, right? So the agent just felt like a teammate inside the workflow and not just like an experiential chatbot that's on the side. And we also ran live demos using real submission scenario, which was really powerful. It did two things. It made the value concrete and it created credibility because those users were our respected peers. And I think that matches a lot of what AI change leaders emphasize, that you just have transparency. You're very honest about where you're at and how you're going to improve the outcome, and kind of those role-based learning paths. So that's first. So it's really designing with your group, your user group. And then second, we train for judgment and not prompts. So it's really role-based micro-learning. How do we ask better questions? This is to Caroline, to what we were talking about earlier. How do we verify the outputs? When do you override the agent? And how do you document the rationale, which is huge from a regulatory perspective? I would say we leaned really hard into show your work. So that agent is grounded and the underwriter stays the decision maker and they have that transparency. And then I would say third, we designed for, control to beat the algorithm reversion. So our underwriters can override, they can edit, they can annotate AI outputs, and we treat all of those edits as product feedback. And the research is pretty clear. People become more willing to use an imperfect algorithm when they can modify the result even slightly. So, I would say at Verisk, we measure the shift in 3 layers: adoption, trust, and outcome. Adoption is repeat usage in the core workflows, period. Trust is survey and behavior signals. So, acceptance versus override rates. Sentiment, like, would you recommend this to a colleague? How happy are you with this experience? And then outcomes are just improvements in time to decision, fewer rework loops, improved submission completeness, higher hit ratios, improvements to your sweet spot and your underwriting appetite. So I think when all of those things can move together, that turns skepticism into advocacy, and that's how we look at it.
Yeah. So we've touched upon human agent collaboration. We've talked about governance and ethics in some way, transparency, adaptability. I would like to dive into ecosystem and executing this type of technology at scale. And my first question comes to you, Caroline. You're right. Within at Bay, we talked about, Alex mentioned that word, orchestration, right? So at Bay, you orchestrate multiple tech layers. And actually, personally, I'm doing a lot of research around intelligent layers. So how the new operating model of insurance is going to look like in the future. And in your case, you do that from core system to, the different agent, right? AI, to transform their full underwriting environment. So how did you decide what to build versus where to partner?
I think it would be best to just to take you back a little, very similar to Alex, we're doing, as you said, Sabine, like we're doing very similar thing in the sense of like the new submission creation, the data extraction, crawling the domain, doing a scan of our customers. So I'm not going to repeat that too much. It's a similar experience in a different way, right? But I do think when it comes, what we've done really well is built our core underwriting system based in AI, and our largest line is cyber. And so we've been able to build those scans that really have been integral in managing our portfolio. And then I also built these underwriting systems that are essential on how we're able to service that broker partner. So when it comes to with speed, right? And so when it comes to making that decision, most of the time it is going to be that it makes the most sense to build it ourselves when you've kind of already built those core systems and the layers. I think there are opportunities to lean on partnerships, but it's definitely because we've built this core system, it's definitely going to have to take a lot of, we don't evaluating the pipeline of what's in the build for the next 6 months, year to 2 years to make sure that it's just, there's enough, return on income, there's enough money in that actually will bring to the company to make it sense to spend money on a partnership like that.
Yeah. Do you think there is value around partnership and ecosystem design, right? Is there an area where there is potential breakthrough where it makes sense, right?
Yeah,
To invent the core.
definitely. I think there's especially in this now that it's like this is my third insure tech, sorry. But Abe is an insure tech. Is that I can see that I've known the pockets of which, it makes more sense to do a partnership. If it's just going to be a delay and we're going to punch this activity down the timeline even further, and there's immediate impact on the portfolio, on underwriting time, that's when you really have to evaluate and say, okay, no, we need to explore a partnership opportunity here.
As we are in the cyber, right, Caroline, there's a question, I guess, for you and Alex as well. Are there customer scanning services that each of you feel are accurate and effective for cyber risk?
100%. We've built our own, and we have seen direct correlation with what results are coming in our scans to how our portfolio is performing in a particular pockets. And so, yeah, I 100% believe. And coming to the Ape, I believe I've never seen the level of data that we have at our fingertips, and that underwriters feel very empowered to make decisions. So it's exciting to be a part of something like that. So I do believe in our scans.
What about you, Alex?
Yeah, similar to Carolyn. I mean, we have capabilities and expertise in-house as well. We have a big, proactive and cybersecurity teams. And in terms of customer scanning services, we run pre-bind checks. Again, as I mentioned before, so we check for things like known vulnerabilities and other attributes pre-bind, which helps with risk selection. But we also do the same continual scanning and for all of our on-risk policyholders as well, to ensure that we can support them with their cybersecurity posture as well. So see massive value in it. I guess the question itself, customer scanning, I mean, we do that in-house, so I wouldn't be able to kind of comment on anything external. We managed all of that internally.
So I'll stay with you, Alex, because we have another question which follows on, which is how often does your organization, all of you, experience bad info, errors, hallucination, which is produced by your proprietary model in a live environment? And how do you address these instances?
So look, the process we go through, as I mentioned earlier, kind of making sure the data is in a good place. We run through testing before it's going live, and again, we're cautious and careful in how we roll these things out. So we're scaling, our agentic capabilities. We're scaling up over time. So we're managing that and ensuring that it's tested prior to going live, and we run kind of tools that support MLOps flows as well. So we're ensuring that there's auditability and everything throughout the process. So I guess kind of we're running pre-checks, and when it goes live, we're ensuring that everything is in place as we're checking that alongside our underwriting team as well.
Thank you. Nicole, anything you want to add?
No.
Caroline? Perfect. So, but there is another one which is coming through from Dave, which is what job will be lost? I mean, when I talk about AI and jobs, I think personally the jobs are going to be transformed, right? We become more investigator, orchestrators. But coming to you, Nicole, first, what job will be lost to AI? For example, do you see an insurance company offering basic personal auto insurance that will all underwrite, all the underwriting will be handled by AI, cutting out all agents and underwriters? What is your view of the future, Nicole?
Sure. So I would say from my perspective, I think what you'll see is kind of a similar tendency to the way we look at like personal lines straight through processing versus like more manual heavy, like commercial lines of business. And so I think there's potential, as you saw, like digital automation really affect that flow, and like what were the responsibilities that a carrier needed to employ with a human. You saw that shift. And so there were, agent portals, right? But you still needed your underwriting staff. So I think what you'll see, I mean, I really do believe it's about augmentation. I really think that there will be a lot of opportunity to take parts of the process and expedite that. I am still a realist in the value of your team. And so like at Verisk, for example, in our own product development, we're leveraging AI and have been, again, I always say in stealth mode, because we were really developing our own workflows behind the scenes for a few years and seeing those productivity boosts and what we could get from it. There's incredible opportunity with large language models to automate some of those tasks, but there's never something that we'll just use out of the box. It does require, I think, from a regulatory perspective, that human that's going to say, yes, this is right. And I think more than that, this is right for my firm. I think what we hear from customers is there's a specific way that we are doing things. And so you will always need your team to have that view of specificity. I do think we will augment a lot of the low-hanging fruit and a lot of the tasks that are pain points for our underwriters and for the carrier.
Well, I would like to ask this question. I mean, follow on with the fact that Verisk is global, right? You are a global company, global scale. You have been implementing AI for quite a few years, and a lot of the carriers I talk to, actually, the one who actually have secretly been working on this, they said, we've been working on this for 7 years, Sabine. We didn't start like yesterday. So what leadership alignment and organizational agility you see, which are required as best practice within the organization to actually start scaling these things, right, across the underwriting workflow?
Yeah, so I think I'll start with a lesson that a lot of us learned in like 2022 and 2023. First of all, yes, AI is old, right? And Verisk is not new to AI, certainly. When you're talking though about generative AI, the model matters, right? It's the spark, but I think the models do not scale themselves. And I think what we saw in that 2022 to 2023 timeline was really like a lot of POCs stalling because they were just model first experiments without this massive operating system to turn them into those repeatable, compliant, and governed workflows. And so the way that we've taken that on at Verisk, so scaling to your point, a lot of these projects across geographies has required leadership alignment, and then I would say like a federated delivery model. So on alignment, we locked in a small set of those global underwriting workflows to scale. So intake, document ingestion, triage, alignment to appetite, missing information outreach. And then we aligned our executives on 3 things. What decisions need to stay human versus AI assisted? What outcomes will define success? And then what are the risk appetite and compliance constraints that we will not cross, right? So that, really operationalize this kind of cross-functional governance rhythm so that adoption wasn't optional and that risk really wasn't an afterthought. And so we treated it as like an enterprise risk and growth program and not a side project, right? So things like Verisk's commitment to ethical and responsible AI, it spells out the AI governance begins with senior leadership commitments under board oversight, and it cascades through our entire organization, those committees, our business units. And so, it, I would say, defines a formal structure. Our executive risk management committees, our AI governance board, decisions, escalation paths, and accountability are all very explicit. So we had that alignment, which is necessary. And then I think on agility, we've used a federated model. So we've got a central platform team that really kind of paves the way for us. So think about standards and evaluation gates and observability. And then we've got more of our regional product teams, whether in the US or Canada or the UK, they're looking at like localizing the workflows at the product level. And certainly there's a lot of, regulatory nuance within those guardrails. And so, really consistent with the way that you would think about scaling and how can we kind of create fast feedback loops, learn in production for those local teams. So, I would say those two things. Yeah.
Thank you, Nicole. So, Alex, coming back to you, if commercial insurance is headed towards AI-enabled real-time trading and buyers being expecting instant and embedded placement experiences, how are you ensuring your digital trading ecosystem evolve from strength to stay relevant and one that can scale also as the market and the technology accelerate and evolve?
Yeah, good question. Thanks, Sabine. I guess I'll build on a little bit on Nicole's point. I'll talk about digital distribution and trading. If we look at less complex lines, particularly in the commercial space, insurance buying behavior over the last few years is shifted and shifting more and more over time to what we are used to in the personal line space. And maybe I'll touch upon the question that was in the chat earlier a little bit. Online, clear, responsive, and more automated. I think we can learn a lot from the evolution in the personal line space. Today we are seeing a clear shift in how consumers are influenced and how they shop. I read recently that I think now the majority of people prefer recommendations from GenAI tools over traditional search engines. So it's starting to disrupt search engine dominance and removing some of that middle of the funnel. And when I say middle of the funnel, I mean, historically, B2C companies optimizing landing pages, for example, for search engine. Now we have multiple LLMs who analyze propositions online, but all behave differently to one another, right? So they use different training data sets and alignment methods, which naturally leads their models to have different behavior in terms of how they're optimizing and searching for propositions. We're starting to see this move into the insurance space. I think starting with personal lines, I'm sure everyone's aware of the news a few weeks ago that Move the Markets emphasizes that with insurance agents like Insurify creating ChatGPT apps. And I think this week we also saw Money Supermarket in the UK. So for anyone outside of the UK, they're a price comparison website and aggregator doing the same. So I think from a broader perspective, we may start to see that shift over time in less complex and SME and commercial lines. From our perspective, personally at CFC, it's important for me to highlight we don't distribute directly to the customer, right? The depth of our broking partnerships and our distribution networks are key for us. So we're always exploring ways in which we can make it easier for our broking partners to trade with us and reduce friction in the journey. As an example, quickly, in our digital channels, we call them Connect, so our API and our portal. If you're a broker today and you want a cyber quote, you have two options. You can enter one attribute, the URL, and we will automate the enrichment of the rest of that. Or you can upload an application form, and we use GenAI to extract the attributes and to pre-populate the journey with the relevant fields. So, the actual entering of data for the broker now is sub 10 seconds. For new business quotes across the whole journey to get a bindable quote, including multiple options, it's less than 3 minutes. So these are on lines that perhaps a few years ago may have taken hours or days in some cases to get quotes. So I think that's important, particularly somebody mentioned it, I think it was Nicole earlier. There's a correlation in the space between speed to quote and conversion, some of the key metrics there. So reducing broker friction and providing that optionality becomes even more important. With that in mind, and also the backdrop of softening markets on certain lines. So look, I think speed, as I said earlier, is one aspect. I think we need to do that thoughtfully and accurately as well. And very quickly, looking ahead, we're always looking at how the market's shifting and how technology is evolving. How we can trade more effectively with our brokers, and we're exploring things like MCP layers, utilizing LLMs over our distribution channels. We think that the future in terms of optionality could be natural written language as well, and it allows us to then understand intent, and digital trading becomes more conversational in future. So we're exploring different options on that front.
Yeah, I think, we'll need to ask the Reuters teams to set up an article because some of the things you're talking about, Alex, is super interesting and actually changing the way we actually buy. I'm doing some work around agentic commerce and payment right now, which is super exciting, but scary. And in Europe, we have regulations, so we don't know when it's happening. But I think in the US, we are seeing this already. So that shift to using GenAI platform to make choices is happening right now, and it's affecting every single industry. So I will ask you my last question, and it's really about action and recommendation. So starting with you, Caroline. So what is one urgent action any CXO, right, head off on this webinar should consider or bring to the board to start advancing their AI outcome-driven execution strategy.
I guess I don't know if I specifically have an action. I think it goes back to the question you asked, Alex, and making sure that when they're presenting options and when they've tested something, that they're actually measuring the lift and that they're actually holding them accountable to numbers and how it's going. So I twisted a little, but that would be my one thing.
Nicole?
I would say stop treating AI as like the shiny new disruptive toy. You need that mindset shift of, can we trust this, to how fast can we integrate this safely and effectively? And I think, who wins in this space will be who goes governance first. And I think the real unlock is really in that cultural shift and those cross-functional collaborations. AI has to become a part of your operational transformation. It cannot be like a sideline innovation team. So commit, jump in, and scale.
Alex?
Yes, very similar to Nicole. I think really it's stop think of it as an innovation initiative, right? This is an operating model change. I think scale depends on things like unified data model, consistent underwriting systems, right? Fragmented data, we know that will kill scale, but I think the real lever is operating model. So the 2 points being cross-functional teams, so underwriting, product, data, engineering, working as one team with a shared accountability. And importantly, leadership alignment is crucial, right? So what is the outcomes, whether that's productivity measures or underlying portfolio metrics, and giving that cross-functional team a clear mandate to execute.
Thank you so much for joining me, Nicole, Caroline, Alex. Today was not about talking about cool pilots, right? It was about talking about the next frontier of underwriting performance. So thank you so much for joining us. We have heard remarkable transformation and outcomes. And also, it's not just about, crossing the checkbox. I would say that, remember, as Alex, Nicole, and Caroline said, this transformation is about governance and ethics, ecosystem partnership, AI integration, and human agent teaming, leadership, flexibility, and adaptability as well. It's about driving trust within the team. It's about unlocking the capability to scale. And it's about identifying sources of competitive advantage. So it's a pleasure to have been with you today. I hope I will see you to one of the Reuters events. The next one being, I guess, in Chicago, the future of insurance. It was a really pleasure to have you here today. So thank you all, and please keep in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.